Hey guys, it's Nail, and I've got another Battlefield 3 shotgun gameplay here for you guys. In this video, I'm going to be using the 870 with Slugs this time, and last time I was using the M1014. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I think about Slugs on the 870. I actually think they're better than Slugs on the M1014. And part of the reason for that, I think, is that, I don't know if this is the case for other people, but at least for me, whenever I'm using the M1014, I find that the hit detection is a lot worse than the hit detection that I get with the 870. So, you know, I was pretty negative about Slugs in the last video that I made about them. And, you know, I don't think they're as bad as I might have made them out to be in that first video. I think they're definitely usable with the 870 from what I could tell. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you're still not going to get completely outclassed, really, by assault rifles and engineer weapons at, you know, medium ranges. So you do see me get some more one-shot kills and at sort of medium ranges and some better hit detection, like I said in this video. So it's just an assortment of gameplay from some rounds that I played last night with this setup. And you know, as you can see, I'm going to be using the red dot sight again. I find that works best because, you know, I mean, I guess you could, if you really wanted to, use a 6x scope, but unless you're really just going to be camping in the back and playing very defensively, which isn't really something I like to do, if you haven't been able to tell from most of the gameplay that I've posted. So, you know, I'm going to be playing a little more aggressively, and I just find the red dot sight works best when I'm trying to use slugs. So, one thing I did actually want to touch on a little bit when in this video is just as I've been using slugs a little bit more, is that you really don't want to hip fire with slugs, and you do see me hip fire a little bit. I mean, obviously at point blank range, hip firing is going to be, you know, okay, it's going to work, but in longer ranges, it's or I mean, not even longer ranges, but in like sort of range where you would think like with a buckshot you could hip fire and still hit guys, it's not always going to be that effective. And so you'll see a little bit later where there's a point where I hip fire a guy, I think 2 or 3 times, and it doesn't kill him. I do get a hit marker, but the penetration, the damage that I get just isn't as good. So make sure to zoom in and to aim down sights whenever you're using slugs. You're going to get a lot more, or do a lot more damage if you do that. And, you know, it's something that you might take a little bit of getting used to, just because, you know, with shotguns, at least for me, the way I play usually with shotguns, I tend to just hip fire most of the time. And so there I got a one-shot kill, but, you know, unless your crosshairs are right on the enemy that you're shooting at, it's going to be tough to get one-shot kills with slugs when you're hip firing. So it's just something I'd recommend. And you do see me actually get a couple of one-shot kills here in this next clip, sort of at medium range. And you know, I mean, like I said, I think slugs on the 870 are definitely not as bad as I felt like they were on the M1014 or M1014, I guess, is a quicker way of saying that. But you know, they're still not a really great setup, but it's a little more viable now, like I said. Another thing I wanted to mention in this video is that especially with the pump action shotguns, I think it's easy to get messed up by the fire rate of these guns, because I know for me at least, I have a tendency, and this is, you could really, I mean, this applies for even if you're not using slugs, but I have a tendency when I'm using a shotgun to sort of fire it really quickly. And I mean, you know, if you use the 870, you know, there's not a huge difference really between the fire rate of the 870 or the M1014 and, you know, something like the Sega. So, you know, I sometimes fire the gun faster than I really should, and sometimes it'll get stuck, and it'll be inconsistent, I guess, in the way and how quick it fires. So that's something to keep in mind, and it gets me a little bit messed up when I'm trying to use slugs and I'm trying to shoot as quickly as I can. And I mean, kind of like what I was talking about in the last video I made about slugs, but you do kind of want to treat this a little bit as an auto or a semi-automatic sniper rifle. And so you don't want to just really spam your bullets, especially with a pump action where you only, if you're using extended mags like I am, you only have 7 bullets in a clip. So it's just something to keep in mind, that you don't want to really go crazy and spam your bullets when you're using slugs in particular. One other thing I wanted to touch on in this video was what kind of secondary I recommend using when you're using slugs, and also if you want to use like an underbarrel attachment as well, what I recommend doing for that, because I think in the first clip of this video you saw me, I was trying out smoke with this setup, and you know, I think another option for an underbarrel attachment if you're using slugs is the grenade launcher. I think that would work pretty well. I wouldn't really use like an underbarrel shotgun because, at least for me, normally when I'm using an underbarrel attachment, it's normally to try to make it so that, you know, if I'm using like a gun, say like the AN-94 or the KH-2002, that's a burst fire weapon, I would use an underbarrel attachment like an underbarrel shotgun to counter the fact that I can't really, I'm not really as powerful at close ranges. And I mean, I know the AN-94 has a good hip fire, but the fact that it's a burst assault rifle makes it a little harder to do well at close ranges. So, you know, when I'm using slugs, I wouldn't usually recommend using something like an underbarrel shotgun, but I think an underbarrel grenade launcher could be useful. Smoke could also be useful, just to sort of help you out, because obviously, as I've kind of talked about before, using slugs does put you at a disadvantage, really, against assault rifles and against engineers. So it is something that you could potentially use if you wanted to. I also just like the medic kit. I think that's always an all-around good equipment to use. So, you know, you can always just use that as well. Along those same lines, I would also recommend using a pistol that you're pretty comfortable with if you're going to try out this setup. I would also use something that has a fairly fast fire rate, but also has some range on it. So that's why I'm using the M9. I think it is in most of these clips that you see in this video, just because it has some pretty good range on it, but it also has, I think it's, you know, depending on which version of it you use, it has, you know, 16 to 18 bullets in a clip. So it's got a good range, but it also has a fairly high clip number. And so it's just something that's, you know, pretty reliable for me as a secondary, and it's something that I'm comfortable using. So it is something that you might have to resort to if you're using slugs, because slugs can be fairly, not fairly, but they can be inconsistent at times. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're using slugs, and just to try to help yourself out as much as possible, because, you know, you are going to be at a disadvantage, really, if you're using slugs. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Basically, my opinion on the 870 with slugs is that it's much better than the M1014. If you're going to try slugs, I would use it with the 870 and not with the M1014. But, you know, that's up to you. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.